This happened to me a couple years ago. Me and my friend were walking from his house to a local park. His neighborhood was a quiet one. Nothing really much happened there. The most you'd get was maybe a car crash here and there. While we were walking to the park, a van pulled next to us. Inside was a big man who had a scruffy beard. He said, "Hey kids, where are you off to?" He spoke quite loudly. We told him we were off to the park. "Do you want a lift? It's pretty far away," he said. I would like to point out that the park was not far away. It was a couple 100 meters or so. We told him we weren't interested and moved along. The van stayed there for around 20 seconds while we were walking ahead. Then it pulled up next to us again. At this point, we got a bit suspicious. We had heard stories of kids getting abducted, and we were very creeped out by them. He spoke again. "Are you sure you don't want a lift? I have some treats for you if you want to come in my van," he said. Once again, we told him we were not interested and moved along. This time, he didn't wait. He'd moved along with us at this point in time, and we got very scared. We didn't have our phones on us, so we couldn't call the police. We heard a car door open and then shut behind us, and we didn't hesitate. We ran. We knew it had to be him. We could just tell. When we glanced behind us, we were horrified. 3 massive men were chasing after us. We quickened our pace. We were pretty athletic, so it wasn't hard to outrun these sluggish guys. We glanced behind us and didn't see any of them, so we decided to take this time to hide. I don't know why we didn't just run back home at this point. Anyway, we hid behind a large tree that sat at the edge of the forest. We then heard some footsteps that were pretty loud. What was said next still haunts me to this day. "If you find these kids, slit their throats." We almost screamed, we were so terrified. We heard their footsteps fade away. When we didn't hear them anymore, we sprinted back home as fast as possible. Us two are the only ones who knew about this until now. We were lucky though, because later that night, a 12-year-old boy was raped and murdered. A couple months later, they found 3 large men in a white van and arrested them. We didn't know what would have happened if we would have gotten the man's van. I'm so thankful we got away, and I hope none of you have an experience similar to this one. I was a little girl on an overcrowded train with my father, who was with my sister in another part of the train, when these 2 guys come up to me and are playing around, saying I should come with them. Of course, I just stayed in my seat. Eventually, we reached our destination, and I said I had to get off. Of course, I went to a different exit door, and they went to another. I stayed on the train and went and stood near my dad. They were on a platform looking for me. I even made eye contact with one of the men. That was my first experience. The second incident happened in the middle of school. I was wandering around Pearl Paint, buying art supplies with my mother, and we split up because we were both looking for specific things. My mom knows I know better than to run off with someone, and this was before cell phones. A man comes up to me and says, "Are you lost?" I respond, "No, I'm not." "You look like you are. Why don't you come with me?" I said, "No, go away." All of a sudden, my mother comes up, and let me put it like this. My mom looks like she's a 15-year-old child, and this guy looks my mother dead in the eyes and says, "Are you lost?" My mom looks at him like he has 3 heads and tell him to move along. He looks angry and eventually walks away. Lo and behold, the same dude appeared on the evening news a week later. I remembered his face clearly because he was so insistent on me being lost it wasn't even funny. It turns out that he got arrested for attempted abduction at a different paint store. So this was probably a year ago in October. I just moved into my current place and was having a smoke outside my house. Around my area are mostly little houses like mine. In between my street and the woods is another small street about 250 feet away. It was around 9 p.m. and was fairly dark outside. Typical night, right? Nope, not at all. All of a sudden, I hear this weird noise. It sounds like loud growls that would gradually turn into screams. It sounded kind of far away, but it still freaked me out nonetheless. I was on alert and standing completely still, trying to figure out what it could be. Then I see it. It was a man in his pajamas about 400 feet away. He was rapidly and aggressively twitching his head, still making the noises and slowly stumbling his way somewhere. I couldn't understand what was going on. This man was acting possessed, or maybe he just consumed way too many drugs, or maybe this was how the zombie apocalypse happens. It was fair to say I was hiding behind these bushes near my front door. After what felt like about 15 minutes of watching this man getting slightly closer to my house, he starts to change his course. He was heading to the woods now, the dark, creepy woods. My eyes didn't leave this guy until he was completely submerged in the woods and darkness, and for safe measure, I ran inside my house when I was sure he was gone and locked all the doors and windows and shut the blinds. Later on, I told some friends and family. I'm not sure if they believe me, but my uncle got me a strong set of pepper spray just in case. To this day, I don't know what happened in those woods or what was wrong with that guy, but to be honest, I'm not sure if I really want to know. I work late hours and usually have a transport arranged by the company I work for. Well, on this particular day, I was not feeling well. I was supposed to leave work at 12:30 a.m., but decided to book a cab and leave a little early. I asked my friend to book me a cab through Uber. Now, I had asked for the cab to be booked for 9:30, but unfortunately, there were no cabs available as it was raining heavily and due to the crazy traffic. Still, I was determined to leave early. I asked my friend to keep trying and I left work. I was standing right in front of the office where there are a lot of security guards and I was feeling pretty safe. Finally, my friend called me and informed me that he had been able to book a cab and gave me his phone number. I called the driver and confirmed that he'd be there within 2 to 3 minutes. I was a little irritated at my friend because I had to wait for a cab for nearly an extra hour as it was 10:30 already by this point. So I called my friend to confirm that I'll be getting this cab at any moment now, and I hung up. As I was still irritated, I didn't want to talk. I got into the cab and something felt off. Something in my head telling me not to get in the cab. Usually the cab drivers have smartphones with the apps to track the distance, and the cabs are super clean, but this wasn't. Since I was so tired of waiting, I really didn't care about it. I asked the driver to take a U-turn, because it's the only route to my home. The guy didn't do it, and he just kept driving straight. Now that the road is mostly deserted, and people don't go there very often, it's almost all bushes and trees, with a thin road leading to God knows where. Finally, I got a call from a number which I recognized as the actual number of the driver, who had called and asked me where I was. I was on the verge of fainting by now. Somehow, I gathered up enough courage to yell at the driver and asked him to stop, which he didn't. Instead, he sped up. Luckily, another car was coming from the front, and I rolled down the windows and started screaming. The driver got confused and scared. Then I demanded that he open the doors. I got out and ran and never looked back. So this story happened to me just this past summer. Me and two of my close friends went to a late night concert in a nearby city. The older part of downtown is notorious for being extremely sketchy and unsafe, especially at night. So I'll start off by giving a little backstory. We live about 45 minutes outside the city and really wanted to see this band that was playing at a bar/club downtown. We left around 7 that night and the concert started around 8:30. When we made it downtown, it was a pretty busy place, but I guess that's expected because after all, it was a college town. For most part of the concert, we had a great time singing along and listening to some great music, not to mention the fact that we were surrounded by extremely attractive women the whole night, which is every 19-year-old male's dream. When the concert drew to a close, we left the bar/club and decided it was time to head home. The first part of our walk wasn't that bad. The downtown section we were currently in was extremely busy with younger people just like us, out on the streets having a good time. But we were parked a couple of blocks away, in a less busy side of town, and that's when things really started to go downhill. About a block or two into our walk back, me and my other two friends noticed we were the only ones walking on the sidewalk, which was poorly lit and surrounded by old buildings. Suddenly out of nowhere came a lady, probably in her early 30s, asking if we had seen a wallet laying on the street. She claimed her husband lost it a couple hours ago, and they looked everywhere but couldn't find it. Immediately, red flags went up in our minds because she wasn't with her husband and he was nowhere to be seen. She began walking with us, and the whole time she seemed a little off and possibly nervous. We were just to the point now where we could see the parking lot where our car was. Keep in mind, this lady was still walking behind us, acting very strange. She then asked us if we'd help her search the parking lot a little bit more for the wallet. At this point in time, she didn't know we were parked here. We agreed to help out just for a minute, but said we had to get going soon because we had somewhere to be. But to be honest, we really just wanted to get away from this creepy lady. Before we knew it, she was leading us to what looked to be a 1980s Chevy van with curtains over all the windows. By now, more red flags popped into our minds as we began walking closer and closer to it. Then, we were about 5 feet away when the lady out of nowhere yelled, "I got some!" Then suddenly, 3 guys jumped out of the van. One had a baseball bat, one had what looked to be a tire iron, and the other didn't have anything. The one with no weapons was the first out, and he immediately started sprinting right at us. Luckily, I have a few years' experience in Muay Thai and was able to get a couple of knees and punches on the guy before he could do anything, and thankfully I knocked him unconscious before the other 2 with weapons even made it over to us. Then we just took off, sprinting to our car, which was about 50 feet away. I had plenty of trust in my self-defense skills, but wasn't about to roll the dice and fight 2 guys with weapons, and I definitely wasn't going to put my friends in a dangerous situation by trying to be a hero. In a situation like that, it's best not to take chances and get away as fast as possible. Thankfully, we outran the other 2 guys and were able to make it to our car. We peeled out of the parking lot and drove off without looking back. My friend in the passenger seat called the cops and explained everything that had just happened. We ended up driving to the local police station to meet with some officers and give a description of everybody involved and where it all happened. We followed the cops back to the location, but they were no longer there. Luckily, they had security cameras in the parking lot and was able to retrieve the tapes. The cops were able to watch everything that had happened. Unfortunately, they couldn't make out what the license plate number on the van was, but the cops were able to get drawings of the suspects. After all that, we dropped one of my friends that was with us off at his house. Then me and my other friend Alex drove back to his house and finally tried to call it a night, but found it very hard because we were still on edge and extremely freaked out. But soon we managed to finally get some sleep. Fast forward to now, about 4 months later, the cops still haven't found a single person involved. For that reason, me and my other 2 friends are still a little creeped out, just knowing those 3 guys and that one lady are still out there. God only knows what they were planning on doing to us, and something tells me they wanted to do much more than just take our money. It's almost hard to talk about it now, just knowing they're somewhere out there and still capable of harming or perhaps even killing somebody.